Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to plunge into fascinating topics and really pull out the key insights for you. Today, we're tackling a concept that's absolutely central to understanding India: unity and diversity. It's, more than just a phrase. Our mission here is to explore the profound layers of both diversity and unity in Indian society.
And also the challenges, right? The things that get in the way of national integration.
Exactly. We've gone through our sources, pulled out the core ideas to give you, hopefully, a really well-informed, nuanced picture. It's complex stuff.
It really is. I mean, India is so often described with that phrase, unity and diversity. And what's remarkable, truly, is just how vast that diversity is. We're talking ethnic origins, obviously religions.
Languages.
Oh, countless languages, customs, even huge geographical differences. It's an incredibly rich landscape we're diving into.
Okay, let's get into it. Let's unpack this. The material defines diversity, pretty simply: variety or different.
Right.
Basic idea. But what really jumps out is just how many powerful, distinct forms of diversity exist within India. It's not like a little bit of variety, it's layers. So many layers, each with its own history.
Absolutely. And the research points to 7 main forms that are really fundamental. We're looking at race, religion, language, region, caste, class, and sexuality.
7 key areas. Okay.
Yeah. Let's start with racial diversity. The sources define race as, a group with distinctive physical features. Older definitions talked about large biological human groupings with specific inherited traits.
The traditional view.
But what's really crucial for understanding India, and frankly the world now, is that modern scholarship basically says there are no pure racial types anywhere. Millennia of migration, intermixture. It's led to what the sources call enormous racial heterogeneity in India.
Heterogeneity, so lots of mixing.
Exactly. So while anthropologists like Dr. B.S. Guha once tried to classify India's population into maybe 6 main racial groups, our current scientific understanding, especially, with genetic studies, DNA testing, it gives us a much more valid way to see differences beyond just how people look on the outside.
That's a really interesting shift in understanding. So what the sources are saying is India's racial makeup isn't about separate, fixed groups. It's more like a dynamic, deeply interwoven history that kind of pushes back against those rigid boxes.
I got it. It suggests there's already a kind of profound unity woven into the genetic fabric itself.
Fascinating.
And this capacity for mixing and coexisting, it extends really deeply into belief systems too, which brings us neatly to religious diversity.
Right.
India is just inherently multi-religious, multicultural. It's the birthplace of, tribal beliefs, Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, and then later heavily influenced by Christianity, Islam, Zoroastrianism, Sikhism.
A real melting pot of faiths.
Yeah, absolutely. And despite having, different core ideas, these religions mostly coexist. This is supported by the Indian Constitution's secular mandate and, importantly, the right to freedom of religion. That's a fundamental right.
Okay.
But what's also fascinating is that even within these faiths, you find tons of subdivisions, different interpretations, sometimes quite ethnocentric positions.
So diversity within diversity, really. But how do they manage to coexist with all these internal and external differences? The sources mentioned shared festivals. Are those important?
Hugely important. Yeah. It's quite remarkable how often shared celebrations bring people from different faiths together. Think about the big ones like Ganapati, Diwali, Ramzan Eid, Pateti, Christmas, Good Friday, Ram Navami, Eid ul-Fitr. They're celebrated widely.
Right. People participate across religious lines.
Exactly. And the sources give this beautiful, specific example: Diwali in Kolkata being celebrated right alongside the Jewish festival of lights, Hanukkah.
Wow.
It just shows how cultural practices can genuinely cross religious boundaries deeply.
That really paints a picture of active sharing, doesn't it? Not just putting up with each other, but actually engaging.
Precisely.
And this spirit, this complex coexistence, often finds its voice, literally, in India's incredible range of languages. Which brings us to linguistic diversity, where speaking multiple languages isn't unusual. It's just the way things are.
It truly is. I mean, the states themselves were reorganized back in 1956, largely on a linguistic basis. The Constitution officially approves 22 languages, and 3 of those, Sanskrit, Tamil, Kannada are recognized as classical languages. That means over 1,000 years of written and oral history.
1,000 years. Incredible.
Yeah. And India's language policy is quite proactive. It guarantees protection for linguistic minorities, and it prioritizes basic education in the mother tongue, the home language. This actually predates International Mother Language Day.
Ahead of its time, then.
In a way, yes. There's a language bureau under the Ministry of Human Resource Development that implements and monitors all this. But there's a big challenge. Preserving this incredible diversity is hard as speakers of some languages become rarer.
I can imagine.
But just to give you a sense of the scale of the effort, Prasar Bharati, that's the public broadcaster, all India radio, they broadcast in 23 languages, and get this, 179 dialects.
179 dialects. Wow. That's astonishing.
It is.
What does that tell us about how a nation tries actively to hold on to its unique linguistic heritage, even with all the pressures of the modern world?
It shows an immense commitment, I think, a recognition that language isn't just about talking, it's about identity, culture. And just like language shapes unique identities, so do the actual places, the landscapes, the histories of India's regions.
Leading us to regional diversity.
Exactly. A region, as the sources explain it, is basically an area defined by a shared culture, a shared history. People identify strongly with their region's past. You see these layers of regional identity, like the northeastern region, often called the Seven Sisters, right? Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Meghalaya, Nagaland, Mizoram, Manipur, Tripura.
Right, the Seven Sisters.
But even within just one state, say Maharashtra, you have distinct regions. Konkan, Vidarbha, Khandesh, Marathwada, Western Maharashtra, each has its own character.
Different flavors within one state.
Definitely. And the sources point out the distinctive physical characteristics of some tribal populations, like in the Northeast, the Garo, Khasi, Naga, Mizo people, for example. And crucially, each region has its own rich, unique history that shapes its present. The example given is Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj and his significance in Maharashtra's identity.
So the big national identity somehow manages to hold all these incredibly rich, distinct local identities, each with its own story. Makes sense. Okay, let's talk about caste diversity. The material calls this a major source of difference. The word caste itself, it comes from Portuguese casta, meaning race.
Right. And sociologically, it's usually understood through two concepts, varna and jati. Varna is that fourfold hierarchy: Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Jati refers to the, thousands of specific occupational or kinship groups, roughly 3,500 jatis, and about 751 of those are classified as scheduled castes.
Okay.
Historically, this system structured society. There was this interdependent relationship, the Jajmani system.
Jajmani.
Yeah, between the Jajman, the patron, often a landowner, and the Kamiyan, the artisans, the service providers from various castes. It was a kind of barter system, reinforcing social ties through economic exchange. That traditional system is gradually fading now.
Right.
Now, here's a really crucial point, often missed outside India. Caste-like divisions aren't exclusive to Hinduism. They extend to Muslim and Christian communities, too.
Really? How so?
Well, you find social hierarchies among Muslims, like distinctions between Amir, Sheikh, Syed, Pathan, and also occupational groups like Teli, oil pressers, Dhobi, washermen, Darji, tailors, and sometimes people converting to Christianity carried their original caste identity and status with them into the new community.
That's fascinating and complicates the picture significantly.
It does. And the Constitution reflects some of this complexity. The Constitutional Order from 1950, amended later, defines scheduled caste mainly for people who are Hindu, Sikh, or Buddhist, but scheduled tribe status isn't linked to any specific religion. People designated as scheduled tribes can belong to any faith.
That's a very important legal and social distinction. So these caste-like structures in other religions, do the sources say if they function identically to the Hindu system? Or are there key differences?
That's a great question. The sources don't do a deep structural comparison, but they imply that while the theological underpinnings might be different, the function is often similar. These divisions still create social hierarchies, they influence social interactions, marriage patterns, so the social reality of caste is much broader than just Hinduism.
Understood. Okay, moving on. Next up is class diversity.
Right. This is defined mainly by financial position, economic criteria, and also education level. And the material stresses how economic class really shapes choices, prejudices, dreams, hopes, aspirations.
Everything, basically.
Pretty much. Think about everyday things. Do you take the bus or a private car? Where do you shop? Where can you afford to send your kids to school? Who do you marry?
Yeah.
The upper class is a tiny minority. Most people identify as middle or lower economic strata.
It really makes you think about how money, or lack of it,
Yeah.
subtly or not so subtly, shapes almost every decision. And what seems striking in India, based on the research, is how these economic classes often intersect with and maybe reinforce older structures like caste, right? Creating this really complex layering effect.
Precisely. They don't exist in isolation, they interact. And finally, we have gender diversity.
Okay.
And here, the sources make that key distinction. Biological sex versus gender as a social construct shaped by culture.
Right. Sex is biological, gender is social.
Exactly. And gender diversity goes way beyond the simple female-male binary. It includes gender expression, sexuality, sexual orientation. The sources define the acronym LGBT, lesbian female relationships, gay male-male, bisexual attraction to any two sexes, and transgender, where biological sex doesn't align with one's psychological sense of self.
Clear definitions.
And what's considered appropriate behavior for different genders, that's down to social conditioning. It varies hugely across societies and even within them. The idea of heteronormativity, the assumption that heterosexual is the default, is challenged. And the material highlights a growing acceptance of gender fluidity. Interestingly, it frames this not as some Western import, but as something with roots in traditional Indian culture, pointing to gender-fluid deities in Hinduism.
That's a really interesting perspective, reframing it as indigenous.
Yes. And then there are the legal changes, the big one. The Supreme Court decriminalizing homosexuality on September 6, 2018, plus government recognition of the rights of transgender people. These are significant steps mentioned in the sources.
Okay.
And the takeaway is that this growing awareness helps. It dispels myths, restores dignity, fights hate and discrimination, and ultimately promotes inclusion.
It shows a society grappling with and legally acknowledging the inherent diversity of human identity. A clear evolution. Okay, so, wow. We've unpacked all these layers. Race, religion, language, region, caste, class, gender. It's incredibly diverse. But here's where it gets really interesting. Despite all that, the sources keep talking about this strong sense of we feeling, oneness. How does India do that? How does it achieve unity amidst this almost overwhelming variety?
It is pretty remarkable, isn't it? Unity in diversity, the key phrase again. It doesn't mean the differences are erased or aren't sometimes sources of conflict. It means togetherness, oneness in spite of the diversity, a we feeling. The research talks about holding diverse communities together through contrived structures, norms, and values.
Contrived structures, meaning intentionally built.
Yeah, like constitutional frameworks, shared laws, national symbols, educational policies, things designed to foster unity. And crucially, unity doesn't mean uniformity. Everyone isn't expected to be the same.
Right. Difference is okay.
Exactly. D.P. Singhal, in his book India and World Civilizations, puts it nicely. He says, unity and diversity is a theme that runs through the entire course of Indian history. He talks about cross-cutting solidarities that help the nation combine and recombine over time.
Cross-cutting solidarities, like connections that go across different groups.
Precisely. Things that bind people together regardless of their primary identity group.
So the idea is that India has this long history of absorbing different cultural strands while still holding on to its core identity. Diversity isn't a threat. It's seen as a strength. A treasure.
That's the ideal, yes. And it's not just a modern idea. Historically, emperors tried to forge political unity across vast, diverse territories. Think of Ashoka, Harshvardhan, Vikramaditya, even Akbar. They ruled diverse empires and often sought ways to unify them politically.
Historical precedents for unity efforts.
Right. And why is unity needed? The material lays out several reasons: to strengthen cultural heritage, protect all those diversities and human rights, boost national morale, enable effective communication, resolve conflicts peacefully, foster welfare, promote prosperity for everyone. Unity is seen as essential for national progress and well-being.
Okay, that makes sense. So, beyond just political history, how does this unity actually show up in everyday life? What forms does it take?
We can see it in several key areas. First, there's geographical unity. India has natural boundaries, the Himalayas in the north, oceans surrounding the peninsula.
Creates a defined space.
It does. And while the climate varies hugely, the monsoon season connects the whole country. Interestingly, the word monsoon comes from the Arabic mausam, named by Arab traders.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And you also see unity in shared agricultural cycles, sowing, harvesting, and reliance on shared natural resources like rivers, minerals, forests. This is beautifully reflected in harvest festivals celebrated across the country like Onam, Makar Sankrant, Pongal, Baisakhi, Bihu. Different names, different rituals maybe, but a shared rhythm.
A shared connection to the land and seasons.
Exactly. Then, religious unity. Despite all the different doctrines, there are common threads. Values like the sanctity of life, kindness, piety, honesty, simplicity, goodness. These are found across faiths.
Universal values.
Pretty much. And religious unity is also physically manifest in this huge network of pilgrimage sites and places of worship that attract people of all faiths. Ancient Hindu sites like Badrinath or Rameshwaram, but also a Golden Temple for Sikhs, the Velankani Church for Christians, the Jewish synagogue in Kochi, the Ajmer Dargah Sharif for Muslims. People visit across religious lines.
Shared sacred spaces.
Yes. And massive festivals. Kumbh Mela, the Feast of Mother Mary, Kurukshetra Festival, Ganpati, Durga Puja, Moharram, Thrissur. These bring millions together, regardless of their personal faith.
A powerful unifying force.
Definitely. Then, political unity. India is constitutionally a plural society. The Constitution establishes the rule of law, meaning all citizens are equal before the law. And importantly, there are special provisions, special concessions for historically weaker sections. Scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, denotified tribes.
Denotified tribes?
Yeah, communities that were unfortunately criminalized under colonial rule and are now recognized as needing special support. Plus provisions for other backward classes and religious, linguistic, and sexual minorities. It shows a constitutional commitment to their upliftment.
So political unity includes trying to address historical inequalities.
That's a key part of it.
Right.
Next, linguistic unity. We talked about the diversity, but there's unity too. The Indian state actively recognizes and protects languages, even those facing extinction. The three-language formula used in many state education systems is a key policy.
All right, the regional language, English or another Indian language, and then a third one.
Exactly. It aims for multilingualism. And public broadcasters like Doordarshan and All India Radio broadcast in numerous languages, reaching across linguistic divides. So while language can be a barrier, the sources also point out it acts as a bridge, connecting people nationally.
A double-edged sword, then.
A bit, yes. Finally, cultural unity. This shines through in literature, philosophy, customs, traditions. Think about festivals celebrated nationwide: Diwali, Onam, Eid, Raksha Bandhan, New Year, Christmas. Details vary, but the spirit is often shared.
Common cultural touchstones.
Right. And the contributions of influential figures, saints, writers, artists, people like Aurobindo, Mother Teresa, Baba Amte, Tagore, Bhimsen Joshi, they foster a sense of shared identity, belonging. The sources also mention how patriotic songs, films, sporting achievements, the role of the defense services, all these showcase cultural integration and evoke national pride.
Okay, so there are these really powerful threads: geographical, religious, political, linguistic, cultural, weaving things together. But even with all that, the sources are clear. India faces big challenges to this unity. National integration isn't guaranteed. What are the main factors that threaten or test this remarkable unity?
The material highlights 5 major ones: casteism, communalism, regionalism, linguism, and economic inequalities. Let's take them one by one. First, casteism. This is defined as loyalty to one's own caste group before the nation.
Prioritizing caste over country.
Exactly. And this can restrict social interaction, but it gets really dangerous when it enters politics. People bring caste biases into voting. Political parties might favor specific caste groups.
It divides people politically.
Yes, and despite laws against discrimination, despite urbanization, education, casteism persists. It's become a way for groups to compete for resources, for power. The sources mention ongoing caste atrocities, prejudice. These obviously damage that feeling, that unity.
A persistent challenge. What about the caste and reservation point?
Right. This is about affirmative action or positive discrimination. India reserves quotas in government jobs and education for historically disadvantaged groups: scheduled tribes, STs, scheduled castes, SCs, with specific percentages, and other backward classes, OBCs. More recently, a quota was added for economically weaker sections, EWS, across castes. It's an ongoing effort to level the playing field, mainly in government-run or aided institutions.
So even with policies trying to bridge the gap, caste identity remains a potent force, socially and politically. Did the sources offer insight into why it's so resilient?
They suggest it's deeply embedded in social structures, and crucially, it's adapted. It's now also a tool for political mobilization and competition for modern resources, not just a traditional hierarchy.
I see. Okay, what's next? Communalism.
Yes, communalism. This is loyalty to one's religious group before the nation. While religious diversity itself is seen as a strength, communalism is portrayed very negatively in the sources. It can lead to separatism, and it's called a blot on national reputation.
Strong words.
They are. The impacts are outlined. Socially, it breeds hatred, bitterness, insecurity, weakens solidarity. Economically, it slows growth, diverts resources from development, harms production. And politically, it undermines democracy. Politicians might exploit religious feelings for votes. It damages India's image internationally.
What fuels it?
Things like religious antagonism, ethnocentrism, believing your group is superior fundamentalism, and deliberate political manipulation. These can all erupt into conflict and violence.
A serious threat.
Yeah.
Okay, third challenge.
Regionalism. Loyalty to one's state or region over the nation, again hindering integration. This often grew out of the movement for states based on language and the desire to prioritize economic development for one's own region. This can lead to rivalries between states.
Competition between states.
Which isn't always bad, but when it takes on strong political overtones, gets mixed with identity politics, it becomes dangerous. The sources cite historical and ongoing issues in places like Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab, Assam, where regional grievances have sometimes escalated into militant separatism.
So regional identity, when politicized aggressively, can pull things apart.
Precisely. Fourth is linguism, related to regionalism often. It arises from the linguistic division of states, and the fact that there are linguistic minorities within states whose interests might get ignored by the majority language group.
Minority language speakers feeling marginalized.
Yes, and this can fuel linguistic nationalism, demands for separate states, or resentment. There have been significant conflicts over the push to make Hindi an official language, especially in non-Hindi speaking areas like South India and parts of the Northeast.
Language debate.
Right. The material also mentions worrying trends like the hounding of people speaking non-dominant languages, sometimes atrocities against minorities, and the decline of tribal dialects in smaller languages.
So language diversity is great, but linguism prioritizing one language group aggressively is divisive.
That's the distinction, yes. Finally, the fifth challenge, economic inequalities.
The gap between rich and poor.
Yes, both between different states. Some have more resources, better management, and also the unequal distribution of wealth within states. This causes tension.
What causes these inequalities?
The sources list several factors. Family background, being born into poverty, facing malnutrition, the concentration of private property, differences in education, who gets access to high-quality professional, private, or international education, unequal access to opportunities generally linked to purchasing power, poor public health, lack of mental health support, individual differences in talent development, and the social environment.
Whole range of factors.
And globalization gets a mention too, potentially widening the rich-poor gap. Think mall culture versus struggling villages, privatization benefiting mainly the upper strata.
Right.
The material acknowledges that inequality is, to some extent, built into the fabric of society globally, often passed down generations. Efforts like welfare state policies, taxation aimed at redistribution, they often struggle to actually reach the most needy. It makes true equality seem like a receding horizon.
Somewhat bleak outlook there.
It is realistic, perhaps, but it ends on a slightly more nuanced note. While economic inequality is persistent, our understanding of equality itself is evolving. And new kinds of risks, pollution, climate change, terrorism, these affect everyone, rich or poor. So there's a growing need for collective effort for well-being that might cut across old economic divides.
An interesting point, shared threats, perhaps, creating new forms of unity.
Potentially. It's a complex picture.
So we've really journeyed through this incredible tapestry, the stunning diversity, the powerful threads of unity holding it together, and these significant, persistent challenges. It's a constant dynamic interplay, isn't it?
Absolutely. The sources really hammer this home. Despite profound differences, India has maintained this remarkable sense of oneness, this we feeling. Its real inner strength seems to lie in its ability to accommodate, to somehow hold all this variety and multiplicity within a larger framework of unity. The challenge, as D.P. Singhal said, is always about preserving that delicate balance between these forces, unity and diversity.
It's a continuous balancing act. Okay, as you, our listener, reflect on everything we've discussed, here's a final provocative thought for you. How do these enduring principles of unity in diversity, and also those persistent challenges we talked about, casteism, communalism, inequality, how do they show up maybe in different ways in your own community or just in your understanding of the world? And how can really trying to understand such complex societal dynamics with empathy help you navigate information better, and maybe even foster a bit more integration in your own context. Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.